pain makes other people childlike and joyful. And they seem to have a choice in the matter about an anti-mentor or an anti-role model. It would be someone causes you to love one particular thing so much. Money, accolades. You can learn how to love one thing so much that it becomes obsession. And in a way, at least like in a spiritual way, you become disfigured.
Mm.
You become disordered, like out of order with yourself.
Welcome to People Watching, a podcast where we figure out what it looks like to become the role model we've always wanted by talking with real people who have found real role models in their own lives. I'm Megan Robinson. Every week, I sit down with a guest where we cut through all the noise and identify better sources of hope, creativity, and wisdom as we learn to make decisions about the kind of life we want to live. So join us. Let's do some people watching. My guest today is Austin Church. Austin is an entrepreneur, marketing consultant, and leader of a private community for advanced freelancers focusing on B2C growth. He's also the author of Free Money, 9 Counterintuitive Moves for Life-Changing Income. I've followed Austin's work for several years now, and I have always appreciated his down-to-earth, practical approach to freelancing and consulting. I've also taken his course, Morning Marketing Habit, which is a great resource for freelancers trying to figure out how to make marketing simple, routine, and unscary. Austin and his wife live in Tennessee with their 3 children. He is a self-described, multi-passionate reader, writer, traveler, runner, and fly fisherman. And he's also a whiskey and barbecue enthusiast, which you have to be in the South. I wanted to talk to Austin because, as he puts it, he had planned to be an English professor, and then he found himself to be a serial entrepreneur and a freelance coach. I was curious how he found himself in that tension of being highly creative while also running a business, which is not something that most creative folks want or learn how to do. Our conversation explored Austin's journey as a writer and entrepreneur, what it felt like to grow up in a loving faith community and how that shaped him, and the many mentors he's had and continues to have in his life. We also talked about the importance of rightly ordered priorities and what it looks like to live in a dynamic tension of constantly discerning what those priorities are and holding them in daily life. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. We're in the studio. Welcome, Austin.
Thank you for having me, Megan.
Thank you. As we get started today, I love to share with my guests and with our listeners some touchstones for the conversation. These just help us with our expectations for each other. These help our listeners know what to expect. And it just guides our conversation and making sure that we're showing up fully. So, Austin, would you love to start us off and just read to the line?
Whatever we share is by invitation, not obligation. If either of us is not comfortable pursuing a topic, let's just say, I'd prefer not to share. Thank you.
Will do. Silence is also a partner in our conversation. Feel free to take a moment to reflect without immediately filling the space with words. Leave room for the inner teacher to whisper as well.
Be present as fully as possible. This is a space to acknowledge our doubts, fears, and failings as much as it is a space to share our joys, convictions, and successes.
And let's ask open, honest questions. If we're not sure what the other meant in the question or statement, ask. gives us a chance to clarify or rephrase and ask questions that we genuinely don't know the answer to. Surprise is a great catalyst of insight.
His name is Nick. He did not have a great childhood specifically because of an alcoholic father. And at my dad's parents, my paternal grandparents' house, he found a haven. So he spent a lot of time there in high school. So much time, in fact, that my grandfather started calling Nick his third son. So his oldest son and I were born the same year. Hunter and he was always one of my best friends. It's telling that both of my best friends growing up were named Hunter, and I was obsessed with the pursuit of something. So that's an aside. Anyway, Nick was the hunter and fisherman. My dad didn't like it as much as I did, though he was always happy to help me find opportunities. Nick called me his third son. So when I think about Nick, who was one of my first role models, I think about someone who's come along, let me show you. And there's a Jesus way about working side by side, and things can only be taught along the way. And even now, like when I pack up once or twice a year to take my family camping, I think about Nick because he always just had his Tupperware containers. And I'm like, where did I learn that? Like, just buy 2 of things and keep them packed, and then going camping isn't such a hassle. So that's one principle that comes to mind is a good mentor says, come along and let me show you. And the learning of things is more experiential than just this transmission of knowledge. The second mentor that comes to mind is a guy named Scott, and he was the youth minister at our church. And I just loved tormenting Scott. And to this day, if we see each other, like, we'll hold each other for 30 seconds. It's not just a hug, it's like an embrace because I just love him so much, and I think he loved me through a lot. But anyway, I think about a mentor as someone who is just going to accommodate your flailings as you figure out who you are, while also just not letting you get away with it, also calling it out, right? So I'm pretty sure, and he would tell you this, my parents would probably tell you this, that he said things to me that my parents said, but I listened to him because he was Scott instead of my parents. But also he had a kind of childlikeness in him. He was youthful, and I always thought he was fun. And so most of the best mentors I've had, we were able to have fun together. And I think there's something about experiential learning plus fun that you'll actually learn more if you don't realize you're learning. The next 2, Lee and Sid, they were high school teachers. And Lee was a Bible teacher at my private Christian high school who was one of the first people in my life who would have real conversations about complex issues with me. I remember like talking to him one day and saying, I'm not sure I'm okay with capital punishment. And he said, I'm not sure I'm okay with it either. And it was this moment that it was like, what are we doing here surrounded by this group of people? He helped me find my own ideas and understand how I had arrived at that conclusion, especially if it is a conclusion that wasn't convenient given my context.
Sure.
So I think mentors give us permission to explore ideas, the boundaries of them, and how those ideas fit in with our own sense of self or identity. And then Sid just had this great sense of humor. Like, he was my biology teacher to begin with, and he had these catchphrases, and someone would ask a question and he would give an answer, and his go-to phrase was, I forget the question, but that's your answer. And I just thought that was ridiculous and hilarious. One time he wore the same tie to school like 30 days in a row just because he wanted to see how long it would take for one of his students to notice. He had this sort of mischievous bent, and he helped me realize that you could be like deeply inquisitive while also being playful too.
Yeah.
And you'll see that idea of playfulness or fun. It comes out a lot because I don't know how to not.
Yeah.
That's just this. Austin is this vacillation between this sort of crippling seriousness and liberating playfulness.
Yeah.
And so I've always gravitated toward mentors who could do anything with a twinkle in their eye, because I did not have any problem being morose. Or maybe melancholy is a better word.
Sure,
I just
yeah,
have a penchant for melancholy.
Melancholy is my home.
Yes, my bittersweet home.
That's
That's my corner over there. But Sid he was one of the first people I met who had just suffered tremendously. And I was like, how did you come out on the other side of that? So I think he had a kind of like everyday holiness about him too. And that was what I understood, is that like pain either breaks people and it makes them brittle and it makes them calloused. Pain makes other people childlike and joyful, and they seem to have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people I've met who've suffered the most, it's one of the two, and there's not a whole lot of folks in between. And he had suffered a lot, and that's his story to tell, not mine. But it's also true of a later mentor, Jerry, who, maybe this is another thing that mentors do. I think I use this phrasing a lot now. They facilitate a process of self-discovery. But he just was very inquisitive, very curious, very encouraging. I remember one time he said, I can't wait until the man in the mirror is the one that I see every time you walk through my door. We need people who just think the world of us, right? It was never difficult for me to think that I was pretty much a piece of shit.
Sure.
And that's in stark contrast to growing up with so much love.
Right.
Going back to the Enneagram ones, a lot of personality types have this core lie that they believe. And it took God giving me a prophetic dream to finally break in and just explain that my fundamental identity is beloved. That is who I am, above anything and below anything, and to the right and to the left too. And so to have those mentors who can't help but see you at your best, and they probably have a more accurate read on you than you have on yourself.
Yeah.
And to just create that container where I could just process and we didn't have to fix anything. But it's not like therapy.
Right.
Because there's just room for friendship.
Yeah.
Right. And the last thing I'll say, just in terms of what do I think about when I think about mentors, and I think this is what most people think about, especially when you have a character like Yoda and our shared consciousness, wisdom.
Yeah.
So many mentors have been able to share principles. Like Jerry, I'm getting married. He was like, Austin, I'm going to help you out. He was like, I want you to memorize 2 phrases. I'm so sorry that happened. Is there anything I can do to help? And I'm like, where's the rest? He's, trust me. And it's not just a man saying this to a woman. It's you are sitting with someone you care about deeply in any situation. And I, being a one, tend to be a fixer and a saver and a doer. And that has worked really well in my marriage. Oh, wait, no, it hasn't. I'd be the first ever, right? But no, it's true. Most of the time people, so that was one. Another one was we were talking about how do you interact with underhoused neighbors? And he was like, people need kindness and they want a listening ear. And if you give them that, that's so much more valuable than money. And that, he is so right about that.
Yeah.
If you turn towards someone who's used to being ignored. Anyway,
Yeah.
principles, wisdom. So I've had so many good mentors. Some I didn't even name. There were
Sure.
college professors. There have been folks at various stages.
Mm-hmm.
There have been like one-time mentors. Like they said one thing to me. Andrew Gordon in Knoxville, Tennessee, in May 2009, who gave me one piece of advice about pricing without intending to, and it has made me several $100,000 because of what I did differently as a direct
Sure.
result.
Wow.
So,
Wow. I heard
wisdom.
Russell Moore. I have not yet listened to the whole interview, but Russell Moore talked with the poet David White recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved how Russell Moore put it. He said, I wanted to talk to someone who for so many years has helped me from afar. And I love that because I think that our mentors, our role models, the people who influence and shape us are also in time, not just in space.
Yeah.
And
like,
for me, C.S. Lewis, huge, formative. Tolkien, we're white Europeans. These are gonna be some of our forebears. We have to.
I read Seven Story Mountain by Thomas Merton when I was in grad school. And I reached this part where he was finally able to admit to himself that what he really wanted was to be a saint. And I was like, all I've ever wanted is to be good. So that about sums it up.
Yeah.
I just don't think I was audacious to use that word yet.
Sure.
Audacious enough. Talk about mentors from afar. I could name a dozen.
Yeah. I've been toying with the thesis statement, a core. What is it that I'm trying to explore? And I would love to hear what you think about this. Role models are those who show us what to love and how to love it.
I might tack this on the end, while learning how to better love ourselves. I think you could technically add that in the first part, like what to love. Oh, there needs to be self-love in there. About an anti-mentor or an anti-role model, it would be someone causes you to love one particular thing so much. Money, accolades, book publishing, accomplishments in the realm of sports. Like you can learn how to love one thing so much that it becomes obsession. And in a way, at least like in a spiritual way, you become disfigured. You become disordered, like out of order with yourself. So when I think about the best role models, and maybe that's how role models are different than mentors. Like I've had mentors who had a relatively narrow focus in one area of my life. Like I've had people give me good business advice from whom I would not take marriage advice or relationship advice.
Sure.
So when I think about a role model, I think about someone in whom I see. And so if they're teaching me what to love and how to love it, they're hopefully moving me toward a kind of harmony too, or a recalibration of my many loves. My problem was never being passionate. My problem was that one thing that I'm endlessly fascinated,
Yes.
right? When Megan and I were dating, my Megan,
Not me. Not me.
not me. When my Megan and I were dating, she would say something like something would come up and it might be like Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would look up Maya Angelou on the date because I'm like, I want to know everything there is to know about Maya Angelou right now.
Yeah.
So I just had this endless fascination. But as soon as I share that story, it's, oh, but you're out of order. You're in a place of disorder because you're supposed to be sitting at a table honoring this person you're with. Instead, you've whipped out your phone to pursue the fascination with the person you'll probably never meet. That could certainly wait. That's what I'm thinking about with, okay, mentors can mentor you in a specific area. If I wanted to understand self-directed IRAs, I could find a mentor to help with that, right?
Sure.
But when I think about a role model, it's more holistic. They're moving me toward a harmony amongst many loves.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, loving well is knowing how much love to give and when to these different things.
Yeah.
How those loves exist in relation to each other. When I think about my kids, I introduce disorder if I let any of my kids come before my relationship with my wife. I become disordered if I let my relationship or my love of work come before my kids. But when I even think about that as the primary breadwinner in my house, there is a constant tension between my family and livelihood, which my family counts on.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far, and I'd love to continue it with you. If there's anything that you've heard that resonated with you, brought up questions, or just made you want to chat with someone, book a conversation with me. I will leave a link in the description box so that you can book a free 20-minute conversation with me at a date and time that works for you. Thanks for being here. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Role models, there has to be, I think, some element of harmony.
Yeah.
Or a complete and holistic picture of loves in relation to one another. If there, and this may be very personal to me, but if there isn't that holistic understanding, that person will infect me with their disorder.
Yeah.
They might actually cause me to change what were more harmonious values. Oh, you really ought to blank.
Right.
If you want blank, if you really want to succeed as like I'm training for a half marathon right now. If you want to have a record time, which I could care less about, if you want to set a new personal record, here's what your training schedule needs to look like. And it's, oh, that training schedule looks like being absent from my home for an extra 5 hours a week. I certainly could become a better runner. You're telling me what to love and how.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
No, I love that. Also, excellent job learning from St. Augustine. Ordered loves.
I should have known that I did not come up with that. And I could not have told you where I heard that. And I'm very happy to know that my namesake is responsible.
Yes. I love that word harmony. I have been thinking of congruity, but I feel like harmony works. What I like about harmony is that it also brings to mind resonance. The idea of being, and when things are disharmonious, when they jar or when they introduce disorder, you can immediately tell when something's out of true. You can immediately tell when it's not in tune, right? When it's not When the symphony, one violinist hits a wrong note, like you just instantly, you might not know who or what caused it, but your brain scratches a little bit. So I love that idea of harmony, and that all the elements of a person's life are pointing toward the same thing, and they're telling the same story.
Congruity strikes me as a little more static. And
Sure.
that's just my connotation for the word.
Sure.
But something, and this is honestly why I resist this is not unique to me, but I resist the idea of work-life balance, because it turns managing the tension between work and other responsibilities and loves into another performance, like literally a balancing act.
Yeah.
But when I think about harmony, I think it's dynamic.
Yeah.
So our lives change over time, our commitments change over time, our loves change over time. And if you're not thinking about something like harmony as three-dimensional and generative, it like changes over time, it becomes new over time, I think you miss out on that idea that, okay, you have a job, and then now you're in a committed relationship. Okay, a new type of harmony is needed. Now you have a child. Okay, now a new type of harmony is needed. You decide that you need to prioritize your health more. New harmony is needed. You have not been nurturing certain gifts or talents. You decide to pick up Spanish again, which you haven't really played around with since high school, or guitar or whatever, right? I think we get stuck, passionate people with a lot of love to give, you might say. We get stuck when we don't renegotiate our relationship with our loves in a continual way. We actually treat our lives as static when they're quite dynamic. We make, in that tendency to make things static, it causes problems everywhere. It's like in personal finance, like some of the like money mistakes I've made were, as soon as you have a new child or you get a dog or you move to a new city, you need to redo your budget. As soon as anything in your life changes, you need to recalculate your loves.
Yeah.
Your time budget, your love budget. That's a terrible love budget.
That
is
can
a terrible
in so many ways real fast.
I will be. Let me go ahead and just take a pause and register that domain. Just kidding. Oh.
I remember one time, one of my really good friends when I was in college was a brilliant composer. And I always loved to listen when he was able to have someone perform any of his pieces. And he also did, I forget what it's called, but it was electronic music where he would just take everyday noises and then he would like splice them up and then recombine them and make compositions out of them. Just completely different way of encountering the world than me. And I remember telling him, there's always such good tension in your work. And he had this look on his face, it's bad. I don't like tension. Weird. I said, think about it. Bridges stay up because of tension. Tops spin because of tension. This force. And tension is, again, dynamic. And so I've always used tension to think about loves, choices, commitments, priorities, all of that, like life, instead of balance, because balance has always seemed more static to me. It's nice to hear that someone else thinks the same, has the same.
I could dig up the reference, but it was talking about storytelling and that a good story is the buildup and release of tension. Now, we love transformation too, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about
that
the
is a kind of
dynamics
release
of
of tension.
a story,
Yeah.
I was doing some push-ups earlier, and I finished the set of push-ups and was just lying with my face flat on the floor thinking about how much I hate push-ups. And it was just funny. I had this vivid like flashback to like middle school when I went to this basketball camp, and at any moment they'd be like, everybody drop and give me 20 push-ups or whatever.
Oh, sure.
And just like how much I hated that basketball camp and how much I hated push-ups. But I thought about, it feels really nice when you're done.
Yeah.
And so I actually just wrote a LinkedIn post about, you talked about my morning marketing habit course. It went something like this. Marketing is like hitting yourself in the face. It feels so good when you're done for the day. So there is that like tension, and a lot of the things that we want out of life require making tension your habitat.
Yeah.
There is no growth without discomfort.
Sure.
So you're constantly pulled between your desire to avoid discomfort and then your desire to become something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was you that said this one time. I can't remember if it was in one of your course, but it was the statement, discipline is remembering what you want.
It's not me.
Okay.
But I love that. And I've never been able to find the original source.
Okay.
And I bet I have spent 2 hours. I know that I've also tasked my assistant with trying to track down the original source too. It was tracked back to the founder of Saks Fifth Avenue, a guy named David Campbell, except David Campbell didn't found Saks Fifth Avenue. So I do not know where that came from,
Okay.
but I love the quote.
I love that, because I think, especially in the faith tradition that I grew up in, desire was a dirty word. Like, it was a suspicious word. Like, you weren't supposed to do what you wanted. It was always counter to what God wanted or what God said to do. I think that's a very limited, and I think it's a very misdirected perspective. Because if we are created, then by God, then we are created like him, and he wants things. There are things that he desires. There are things he desired so much that world came, humans here. And I also think he created us, if we are created to want him, but we are made unique in our own way, then that means how we want him and how we pursue him are going to look different to each person. And that but it's also, he wants to work in collaboration with that and in partnership with that. And to remember to think about what it is that you want, and to be willing to live with that tension of constantly interrogating your priorities, or constantly interrogating those things, the things that you want. Is this truly what I want? As I said at the beginning of our conversation, when I was younger, I wanted to be a starving artist in an attic. That was my grand ambition. Now I'm like, I would like to keep a roof over my head. Also important. But I also think about, what is it that I am here for? What is it that I'm here to do? What is it that I am gifted and skilled? What are the skills that I have picked up at being an administrative assistant multiple times over, being a leader and a manager? Holy crap, somebody gave me oversight of $500,000 money. I'm like, what's worth it? I went into theology and poetry.
Yeah.
Well, because I know how to
Not
do
spreadsheets.
No. And so that phrase, that reminder that discipline is remembering what you want, it means maybe saying no forever. It means maybe saying no for now. It means maybe saying it doesn't get the airtime that something else is going to get. And I think that how you've described that, I love budget. Oh man, that phrase is stuck.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
And I think that there's a lot there. But it's also tied up with that harmony that we were also talking about and thinking about, is this going to take me out of true, or is this going to resonate with who I am and want to be? Yeah. Yeah. 2 more questions. Oh, you were going to say something.
I was going to say another thought about tension, and then we can move on. You can't do whatever you want and get what you want. So that is why the idea is discipline is remembering what you want, because you have to have a commitment to something that you want to pull you forward like a harpoon in your chest, towing you forward through discomfort. Because we're just so disposed to immediate gratification.
Sure.
And one other thing, I could dig it up. This guy did some research. He was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he thinks one is missing. He said the pursuit of more is just as intrinsic or essential to what it means to be human as love or belonging, maybe even food or shelter. Because otherwise, what could possibly explain so much of what we spend our time doing?
Yeah.
And I just think that's significant, because if God is making all things new, then God must be speaking through desire as well.
Yeah.
If God is renovating my desires and making me a new creation, my trust in my desires as a way that God may speak to me should increase. I did this life plan engagement. The methodology came from the Patterson Center. And anyway, I was talking to the consultant, my friend Daniel, who's guiding me through this process. I think the original founder's name is Tom Patterson, maybe. Anyway, we were talking about, what do you want to do? And I said, what I want to do is I want to double down on the youth ministry at church, because my daughter's in it now, but there are only 3 kids in it. It's not like there's much for us to do, but I'd love to just spend more time with my daughter. And Daniel goes, why don't you do that? And I said, surely it can't be that easy. That's what I want to do. So just do that.
Yeah.
And Daniel, being Daniel, was like, I think we need to sit in this for a moment. Surely God can't be calling you to do the thing you want to do. So we sat in it a moment, and I just think, yeah, if you are alienated from God, for you to do whatever you want to do may just look like folly.
Sure.
If you are connected to God and God is sanctifying you, and you are, with the Holy Spirit's help, trying to follow the way of Jesus, you have desires along the way. Those desires may be pointing to what God has in store for you. It's like Ephesians 2. It's like the good works prepared in advance. Pretty sure God's capable of making it so that the good works he prepared in advance for you become the things that you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can move on, but
Yeah.
I was just like,
I also think
Anyway.
about the verse in Psalms where it says, "Delight thyself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart." And I think people forget again that idea of
That the
order.
delight comes first, and that God may reorder or
Right.
replace desires in your heart.
Yeah.
And it's like his trick, right? It's
Yeah.
sneaky.
He's sneaky that
If you
way.
delight in me, it's, oh gosh, why did it just slip my mind? Seek first the kingdom of God, and the rest will be added to you.
Yeah.
That's, but if I seek first the kingdom of God, I'm just going to be a lot less interested in these other things.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
God's, gotcha.
See?
Yeah. Joke's on you, Megan. Oh. You had 2 other questions. Please save me for myself.
Yes.
You had 2 other questions.
Penultimate question.
Mhm.
What about this conversation has been most helpful for you?
I don't think I knew until you asked the question that my life has been I knew it, but it's just been this vacillation between melancholy and joy. So speaking of tension, like those 2 things are bound up in each other, at least in me. And generally things go better for me if I stop trying to fix myself. I forget where I was. I could probably find it in my journal. I was torn up about something and I was praying. And God said, I like the way I made you. Better things happen in my life when I just don't try to resist the ebbs and flows of either one. It's okay to be melancholy sometimes, and it's okay to be joyful and childlike and to want wonder. I think it's especially important now. I think joy can be an act of resistance. And we don't have to say more about that, but that part of myself, I'm like, oh, I think that's really important right now. I think
Yeah.
that is one way I can be salt and light to other people.
Yeah.
And it's not superficial
Mhm.
and it's not flaky. I didn't say happy, I said joyful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My wife, Megan, she will sometimes say, are you happy? And the joke is, I say this seriously, but it's become a joke. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm not sure I believe that's important.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure I believe that being happy is important.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's been helpful for me, is just to be like, that's the way I was as a kid.
Yeah.
That is just this sort of dialectic
Yeah.
dialogue that is constantly happening in me. There's a push and pull constantly between bittersweet and bright.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Last question. What is the story of the best or the worst taco that you have ever had? It could also be taco adjacent.
Taco adjacent. It is a taco, but not really. I was on this mission trip in Honduras, and it was breakfast time. Folks working in the kitchen at this little, I think it was like a little retreat center where we were staying, would make tortillas by hand. And then there were black beans that were mashed up, made into refried beans, and then cheese. And it was really simple. If I went and had it now, I doubt that I would think it was that good. But it was my first time out of the country. I think I was a junior in high school, maybe sophomore. And just simple food prepared with love and for breakfast. I'd never had beans for breakfast. So there's that part of me that was like, where's like the bacon and the eggs or the pancakes or whatever? But it was very tasty and it was very filling. And I just, again, I'd never been out of the country. I'd always loved to explore. And so it was this taste of, well, people in other places do life differently. And if you can taste that, you may realize you like it. So that is one that comes to mind, just that made me like, it's so weird that I even remember that. Like, how many breakfasts have I had in my life?
Sure.
So that would be one. And then this is taco adjacent, but not at all. There was this preserved or cured egg in a bowl of ramen in Austin, Texas. That was one of the single best bites of food I've ever had, and that sounds awful. Like a pickled egg or a preserved egg. Gross. But that, I don't know why that came to mind as
Sure.
soon as you said taco adjacent.
Yeah.
It's not even the same. It's not even any sort of like Hispanic or Spanish cuisine. It's Japanese food, but you said taco adjacent, so I blame
I did say
you.
taco adjacent. Right. Two things about this.
How many adjacencies are we talking about?
Yeah. Eventually, we'll make our way around the globe. I love that it took you so long to come up with an answer to that question. And honestly, that's been everybody's favorite question so far.
Right? Because, I didn't know what she was going to come up with next, but might have been like about my soul or about my relationship with my father, or you should. So again, I do have a little bit of mischief in me. And every once in a while, if I'm at a dinner party or something and I need an icebreaker, my joke is, hey, I've got a question for everybody. And people are like, okay, cool. And I'll say, what is your place of deepest shame? Then just let that sit, because that's not a question anyone wants to answer, right? So I'm going to give that to you. If in future interviews you want to use that one right before the taco question. Okay, last question for you. What is your place, and you say it like bright and peppy, what is your place of deepest shame? Just kidding. What's the best taco? What about you? What is your best taco been?
I keep coming back to the first time I ever had a fish taco. And I was visiting friends in San Diego. And the first time I'd ever been to San Diego, anyway.
Which is a great town to eat in.
Yes. And it was February. I had just gotten some health news that I did not have a resolution for. And so I was in this liminal space of, I was in Schrodinger space. Away. And so while I was in that space, I had traveled to San Diego. So it was February. And at the time, my family and I were living in DC. So it was cold. And I stepped off into San Diego. Never been there. I'm like, sunny, beautiful weather, sand. And then my friends took me to Rubio's, which I don't even think is a local. Like, I think it's just a small chain in the area. And I had fish tacos for the first time. And I was like,
did they have some Baja slaw on them?
Yes,
they did.
Yes. So that was mine. And my family thinks I'm incredibly weird and that fish tacos are very gross. I try them just about everywhere.
I disagree with your family. I think that
I'll be sure to tell them.
They're deceptively hard to do well.
Yeah.
Because if you fry fish, it can end up greasy. And the last thing you want is a really greasy taco. If I'm going to have greasy taco, just give me like beef.
Yeah. Austin, thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight. I'm really glad we got to talk.
Me too. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for facilitating a process of self-discovery.
Excellent. I love it. All right. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope you found something that resonated with you and that encourages you to become more hopeful, creative, and wise in your own life. Make sure to check out the links in the description below and subscribe if you enjoy this episode. Shalom.